Business ownership has never been hotter, but how do you do it? That's where I come in. Allow me to guide you on your journey. Welcome to Ion Franchise. This episode sponsored by SEO Samba. Empower your franchise with predictable results and AI-driven marketing. Hello, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising, and I'm your host, Lance Graulich. You know, there are a lot of franchises today out there that are unsexy, boring, and they just sound awful. And as a franchise consultant broker, when I bring them to people, they look at me like I am nuts. But a lot of them are good businesses, and we're going to talk about a great business today that is actually something that is amazing. People love fitness. People should be staying in shape even more. We have the founder of JETSET Pilates. She's the founder and the president of this amazing franchise. Tamara Galinsky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that amazing intro, Lance, and super excited, super excited. I'm pumped already to just hear how you perceive JETSET, which is really, you hit it on the mark. So thank you.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, to be able to do, I happen to know you have some $1 million locations. Imagine doing $1 million in revenue with a Pilates franchise. So how did you get into Pilates? Where did this all begin? I'd love to hear the history, and so would the audience.
Great. Well, thank you for asking really the right question from the beginning. It was definitely a roundabout way for me to be in fitness. My family came from former Soviet Union back in 1989 during the last wave of, Jews getting out of the country. So when I actually got to the States, I was 15. I did not speak any language, was super poor on food stamps. And that's when I decided I want to accomplish two things in life. I really wanted to be independently wealthy, but I also wanted to do that with something I loved. Right. And that's the ultimate dream of entrepreneur. Yeah. And really my personality pivoted from like this really shy person to go-getter. I really worked my ass off, did great in high school, and got into University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school.
Yes.
My, got the right degrees, not necessarily what I wanted. I did want to be an actress, and my parents told me, with your accent and you're not getting a penny from us, good luck. So I moved to New York City eventually, and I worked in technology and did extremely well, paid off all my school loans within 2 years. So I was really on a fast track and being independently wealthy, but very miserable. So fast forward, I got married, moved to London, had my first baby, and I started to really have an opportunity to discover different fitness methods in London. And that was because when I gave birth to my first daughter, and it happens a lot to women, the first child, you gain a lot of weight. That's what happened to me. And I just, like a squirrel, I've tried everything until I discovered a little Pilates studio in the basement in London. And it really transformed my body and my mind. So when I moved to Miami, few years later, and Miami Beach, you're in a sexy capital of the world. You would think it's the fitness capital of the world. I'm talking 2009. I'm like, okay, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to go find a studio that I love. And believe it or not, there was nothing. Wow. There were like the old style wooden reformers with few people, no music. And it was just it didn't motivate me. Yeah. And at that time, I lived in this really luxurious high-rise building. And I said, you know what, I'll just create my own. And I remember all my girlfriends, all the young moms saying, you must be crazy. You have the best gym. Who is going to go? Nobody's going to go. Please don't do this. You're going to fail. And I didn't listen. And I opened the very first location that actually is a legacy location that exists there today. 8 reformers. And there was no marketing. There's no digital media. All the bells and whistles we thankfully have today. Yeah. And it was just... people loved it so much. They would tell their friends. And eventually I was in Miami Beach. I started to see zip codes of Palm Beach coming into the studio. Wow. So I knew I've created something unique. It was not just the workout of Pilates. It was the experience and the community. And I definitely branded it right. The name was right. So,
Yes.
it kind of started to take off.
I love that story. So tell everybody what a reformer is. You mentioned the old style reformers. So that's that big, ugly, wooden looking torture device that was the original when Pilates first was started.
Yeah, so I mean, they're very original, and there's actually a Pilates museum, and I follow it. I mean, the very original reformer created by Joseph Pilates was really meant for like the dancers, the dancer community to align and strengthen and lengthen their body. When people had a lot of time, they weren't so busy running around, and it was just different nature of Pilates. So what old reformer is that there is a middle ground of reformers. There are balanced body reformers. There's a lot of reformer companies. They're improving the reformer look and feel because you can't imagine the old cars being Teslas today.
Yeah.
And what we have a custom reformer to JETSET, which is really taking the best of elements of traditional reformer and making it specific to a JETSET class experience so that class moves faster, you move from a move to a move faster. It's almost like my idea was to create a choreographed musical experience on a reformer, and to do that, it had to be changed.
Yeah. I love it. So, and the square footage of these locations are 1,500 square feet, larger, it depends.
That's a great question. So we make our money off reformers, right? So we even have a metric called revenue and profit per reformer. So depending on your market, obviously it has to be a viable market. The more reformers you can fit within the
Yes.
brand standards, the better off you are. The minimum, we're at 1,500. That fits about 12 reformers. But a lot of our franchisees are moving towards larger spaces, towards 2,500 square feet that could fit 16 to 18 reformers.
Yeah.
So there's a range that's available to our franchisees.
Yeah. It just reminded me as you said that you think as the founder in terms of reformers, just like when in a salon space or a massage concept, how many, beds do I have or how many, stations do I have, if you will. So I love that. Obviously, if you're going to have high demand, you've certainly learned. Where do you see this concept going? Can every city in America have at least one location? Who is this clientele that's coming to you? Obviously, in Miami, if they're coming from Palm Beach, they have a little bit of a few bucks.
So we're close now to 50 locations and
Wow.
franchise developed, and we only started franchising 2 years ago. We have units sold in Atlanta, Dallas, New York, Brooklyn, Raleigh, Salt Lake City, Washington, D.C., San Diego, Australia. So we're actually moving.
Australia. Whoa.
Yeah, we're developing a flagship studio in Melbourne. Actually, a client who tried the system here while living in the pandemic in Miami moved back to Australia and bringing it to Melbourne.
That's amazing. So
Yeah,
what is the
so
investment typically? Obviously, for those listening at home or in their car, in the item 7 in that franchise disclosure document, happy to help you understand all that on a later episode
sure.
or off the phone for those listening. But the item 7 is always going to have a range. So on
Right.
average, what is it these days?
So the range is an interesting thing because the biggest element for us has been construction. The numbers in construction have been really wildly going up lately,
Yeah.
but I would expect on an average to be, and these are not exact numbers, between 400,000 to 800,000. And the only reason there's a range is if you take a bigger square footage and if the space is some legacy space from another business that already has plumbing and some of the
Yeah.
things that you don't have from scratch, and how much TI you can get from the landlord. So these are your biggest variables, right?
Yes.
And it also, depending on some of the hot markets, if you look at real estate, I mean, the question number one from our franchisees, in some of the really hot markets like Austin or Denver, will I even find the space? And we
Yeah.
always tell them you always find the space. It's just a matter of being patient. But the biggest variable is that the real estate cost.
Yeah, got it. So as far as who you're looking for in this franchise, when you have 50 locations at this point, if you were gonna
In development, yeah.
in development, But, let's say your top franchisees today, what did they do before? Are
We
they
have
just,
them. I know who they are without
yeah,
saying their name. They're great,
yeah,
and I truly love
no
them.
names, no
Yes,
names.
it's really interesting. I do believe in manifestation, and I really, when I thought about franchising years ago, I said the franchisees are extension of you. They're extension of your brand and your business. And who would be my ideal avatar? And so far, everybody we've signed, and even those the ones who are open, they are those people. They are professionals. They've had really already excellent careers. Some of them are continuing with the careers and putting in the operations people on board. Some of them just signed 6 months ago and already on the third lease because they're doing so well with the first location.
Yeah,
But
I
but
was
but
gonna, I'll tell you, one of the best signs of a great franchise is when people are committing to doing multiple locations.
yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I love it.
so they're committing to multiple locations. We have the franchises right now. They're operational. They're beating even the corporate studios because that's where we have the biggest cluster that I've created to create the brand. I wanted a sexy, noticeable brand, and I always knew that people come through Miami. So people who went a little bit further out and are beating all the expectations, investment bankers, or they were HR professionals working for companies for a long time. Sometimes it's a family that wants a legacy for their children who
Yeah,
have graduated from college, and we know what's happening in corporate America. They're investing further into keeping their children, creating opportunities for them. So I think the franchisees also the ones who, that's an important part, love the brand. And I've
yeah,
had calls as a founder with family offices. These are people who buy multi units, and the husband, I've never tried Pilates. I don't know what it is, but I love your brand because it's a luxury brand. And it's true. We
yeah,
know we have created a luxury brand with JETSET, but we also made it accessible.
yeah,
And as you know, two things that are important: fitness, up and down. The economy could be up and down. People are not going to cut on staying in shape. That's number one. And also luxury brands, they suffer less in times that when times are harder. So our focus is always on these two elements and continuing with JETSET being recognized as the luxury brand in Pilates, but also at affordable prices and available to most people.
yeah. Well, you certainly nailed it from my perspective. The luxury items, especially in fitness, are those people are not getting away from it. My wife, my daughter, they did not stop doing their fancy workouts in Las Vegas where I live. There is no Jet
Okay,
Set Pilates just yet,
there
but
will be.
soon enough. So talk about staffing. Who is an ideal person? Because that everybody today, it seems like, is talking about how difficult it is to find great
Higher.
people. So talk a little bit about that, and how many staff team members, if you will, do you need to staff a location, and where do you find them?
Right. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's top of a lot of people's mind, just like finding the right space. Fortunately, because of who we hire, and there's only two people at any time in the studio. It's your studio lead and instructor. I think it's a really simple business. That's what I want potential franchisees to understand as far as staffing. It's simple. Two people at a time. Maybe during the opening, you want to have your manager there as the third face because there's a lot of new people and excitement coming in from the community. But it's
Yeah,
really just two people. It's a lead and the instructor, and that's the instructor is the variable. And because we have our own training system in a JETSET method of Pilates, what we hire for is the personality.
yeah,
We're not looking for instructors with traditional Pilates experience. We're looking for people in the community, which is so much easier to find, who just want to get into fitness and want to learn and have the personality to be kind of like mini public speakers in class. The rest,
yes,
we're going to mold them into that. So we haven't had that many challenges finding the instructors. The second thing about retaining staff, and we have a whole protocol for how we retain and elevate them from the time they get trained, and how they raise within the organization. We do have our own training school. It's the JETSET Pilates Academy. It's ran by really, really experienced person. So we're starting to do these trainings a lot more frequently, and it's about 30 hours. here. They happen here in our HQ right now. And then we start to fly around the country and train other instructors to be able to train the staff locally. So the systems are definitely in place. We think about this all the time, and we have a solution.
Sponsored by Leap Brands. From executive recruiting to hourly staff, Leap is your one-stop shop for all of your franchise talent. I love hearing that story or about the staffing and the fact that it's actually simple, as you say. I really believe when you find people that are super passionate about something, it just makes it so much different. So
yeah, I mean, I keep hearing, and it's amazing. I myself still am pretty hands-on, or I try to be, and I walk into the training of Pilates instructors, and I always say, tell me a little bit about yourself. I just want to know who is training, because it's not the people, that's not going to be their full-time job. They all have other things going on. So they come teach early morning classes or weekend classes. And over the last training, I had hand raisers. Well, I graduated from University of Pennsylvania, and I'm having like this little mini midlife crisis, and I want to do something I'm passionate about to complement my job. Somebody else went to Stanford University to study medicine. And they wanted to a lot of smart people, and then they go into that for really, one thing about JETSET, and I hear that it resonates with the brand, is that it's not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing. Because when you're in a Pilates class, it's not like spinning a bike. You have to really listen to the instructor. We made the class super musical. The music is curated by a DJ, so it's really in the background, and you have to really pay attention. There's so many moving parts. So that's 50 minutes of people, like, they check out, they're in a meditative state. So when you're an instructor, that's the same thing. You kind of check out and you feel good about being on that floor and influencing lives.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. So the class, a typical class is 50 minutes?
The class is 50 minutes. In fact, when we see clients, if we're going over 10 seconds over, they look at us and like, no. It's an intense class. We're not an easy method of Pilates. We're really challenging. It's a very challenging class.
Is the intensity, you mentioned earlier, strength, ballet dancers originally, when Joseph Pilates started this, it was, sort of more elite athletes, and it was strengthening and it was lengthening of muscles. Is it still a lot of the flexibility? I know flexibility equates to fitness these days as well, but my daughter has done it many times and absolutely loves it.
Yeah, really, you hit it on the mark. I mean, it's both strength and flexibility, because first of all, you have to balance on these reformers, so it hits the balance part. And then the machine is designed in such a way, and we actually educate our clients. We don't keep it a secret. It's not like this is JETSET secret. We really hit all the body parts in our class. We hit the obliques, we hit the core, lower body, upper body. So there's strength, there's flexibility, there's endurance, and the athletes are still coming off season to JETSET. We're seeing more men, actually, because the guys used to think that this is like, oh, is this another yoga? Which it is not.
But it's great to meet women if you're a single guy, especially.
Well, there's that part too. Definitely. There's the whole group in Miami. If you go, there's always girls at JETSET, or, Pilates studios in general. I mean, that seems to be the trend, but you're seeing more and more men that are seeing the benefits. For example, people really love paddle or pickleball, which is, quick twitch muscles, and they combine it with JETSET, which is super slow and controlled.
Yeah, I love that. Talk a little bit about marketing. So we talked about training. So when somebody becomes a franchisee, I know you're getting a lot of press. Everybody wants to be part of JETSET Pilates. What does that marketing look like? Is it social media? Is it digital marketing? Is it local area marketing?
Right. Look, I mean, when I just started JETSET, I grew organic, and it was really the only way you can grow organically if your NPS scores are high. People have to love you so much that they tell others about you. So there's still, even though people say digital, there's still the old-fashioned, both from franchise experience. We have clients who now raising their hands, who go to franchise studios. I love it. I want to now take this as a franchise to another area. Yeah. So there's still a lot of word of mouth, but of course we're super sophisticated in our digital marketing, getting organic leads, both into the studio. We use Meta, we use Google, we use a lot of other platforms. And then on the B2B side, getting in front of potential franchisees. That's also through our organic digital media. We have quite large spend on that.
Yeah.
And, we're consistent with how we want others to perceive JETSET when we market. It's a friendly community of staff and instructors, but it has sex appeal.
Yes, absolutely. So as far as the word of mouth, you mentioned NPS or Net Promoter Score. I know people love you, and there's really not much. There's Pilates competition, but there's not much in the way you set it up. You mentioned the equipment. It's what I call the secret sauce, so the proprietary nature of the equipment. So obviously, that's resonating with people. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So, our reformers, obviously, we call them Rolls Royce of reformers. But at the same time, I always say, look, when you go to Barry's Bootcamp or Soul Cycle, you're not going to look at the, brand of the treadmill. You just want it to work for you, right?
The experience.
It's the experience. And I really think if we change the reformer today to something else, people still going to love JETSET because there's so many parts to JETSET that make it JETSET. And I think the other really big part of it is music. My background, I actually graduated from music school and classical piano. So I have a very keen sense of melody. And I always told people they don't know what they like until they try it. So the way we curate our music is really pleasant. It doesn't get on the way of the class,
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. We invest into working with a DJ to create these lists. So I think it's the reformer is one of them, music is another, and the way we on the front lines, how we deal with our clients. I mean, our instructors and staff are heavily trained on the client experience.
So when people are in the process, so myself as a franchise broker, if I find somebody for you or somebody hears you on this podcast or Googles you and finds you, describe the process a little bit. Obviously, it's a first call. I call it like a first date, and then it gets more serious, and eventually they get to you. And you give the grand approval?
Well, thankfully, it wouldn't just be me. We're a really fair organization. We call it franchise committee board. We have a board. I'm a member of the board. The first thing is that they fill out a form either online or they go through wonderful people like you guys that you recommend us as a brand to work with. And we actually have 2 franchise development people. One of them spent 7 years with Club Pilates, so we know what we're doing. Another person has been with us since we started JETSET. They're wonderful people, and they take you through a brand webinar. And the brand webinar, it's really just kind of like telling you about our offering and making sure you understand our vision and understand the offering. And then if the next step is being financially qualified, right? Because we want to make sure it's not just aspirational, that you can actually open and create a JETSET. And finally, we do financial planning sessions where we want our franchisees to succeed. So we actually invest heavily into the process before the confirmation day to make sure they understand the financials, they understand their market, how viable the offering is. And then right before the confirmation date, there's a, meet the founder, and that's me. I meet everybody, and it's really a conversation about, hey, why do you want to do it? What's your vision? To make sure they understand about the staffing, the commitment, and how they're going to set up the operation, because everybody goes in it for different reasons. And then, confirmation day is really pretty much they're 90% there.
Yeah. And in most confirmation days, people are already in. They just, in your case, you're really awarding franchises. It's a two-way street, right?
So our confirmation day has been really educational. I mean, we show them, one of the things we did before we started franchising, our team, which is incredible, spent 9 months developing the systems and processes to put them in place, as opposed to let's sign and then figure it out. So in a confirmation day, we actually share with them all the back-end systems from the moment they sign the franchise agreement to after they open, because we have people on the front end where they help them to open. And once they open, we have people then who support them after they open, and just the cadence becomes a little bit less. So they learn about that. And we usually ask at the end of the confirmation day, is there something that surprised you today? And 95% of the time, it's the same thing. I was coming here already knowing that I want to work with JETSET, but I was surprised the depth of your systems and the depth of your support. So that's really great. Obviously, we're always going to calibrate it and learn about it, but I know that's somebody who started the business on my own and had to figure out, literally Google how to create an LLC, Google how to register the business. we want to take all of these unknowns, and with the 3 legs, at least give 2 good legs to the person, right? That they can run.
I love it. So a lot of people listening to this show have never owned a franchise at this point and want to know, why JETSET Pilates? If I did have that net worth with all these other options, why JETSET? I would imagine they certainly have to have some sort of passion for fitness. This is a hard business to get into just to make money. You have to have a passion and have to really fit the culture. But why JETSET?
Well, I think don't underestimate the money that the franchisees so far have done, and it's not a promise of the future. They're happy with the results, but obviously they went into it knowing, not having been promised anything, knowing that they want to be surrounded by like-minded people. They want to be in a happy place, and I think JETSET just stands out because there's something catchy with the name. There's sketchy with our branding, and we're stand out. Look, we know we have competition, and I'm a huge admirer of Club Pilates, believe it or not. Even though it's a different method, they've done a great thing by standardizing your traditional, kind of a bit older demographic, accessible Pilates, and they're sold out pretty much of all their territories. We're filling that other gap for really young, dynamic professionals who want a lot of sprinkles on top of their Pilates and do it in a luxurious setting at affordable prices. So I think, and that's all I'm focused on. And the vision for the business in the future, I think with a strong brand, we're probably going to add a little bit more to our things, to our merch, maybe other verticals, once we reach a critical mass. So I'm super excited for what's ahead.
That's awesome. I do have one other question regarding franchising in general. So when you began franchising, you had a vision, and here you are 50 plus locations later in development. How are you feeling now? I mean, what really got you to do franchising in the first place? And I'm sure you're pretty happy now.
So definitely not an overnight success. I started the brand 13 years ago. I couldn't have done it without the team that's behind JETSET. We have a CEO, we have a chief strategy officer, chief operating officer, we have a whole slew of people. But I'll tell you, I've thought about franchising as long as 5 years ago. I started reading all the books, including a book called by Mark Siebert, who is the CEO of iFranchise Group.
Yep.
But you can read all these books and you realize there's just so much, and the only way you can do it is if you take the best brand with franchising experts, right? But not all of them have to be franchising experts, have to be a franchise expert, operations person. And that's how, I've worked really hard on setting that up for years before JETSET Franchising really, came to life. And the reason I thought about this, I had people ask me, can I open a JETSET with you in this market? I'm like, well, what does that mean with me? I don't know who you are, So believe it or not, the first franchisee would drive from Fort Lauderdale to Brickell 1 hour each way for 1 year.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, clearly people want to do it. And that's why, I said, I'm not going to just keep taking. I think this is a great model for franchising versus corporate. And I'll tell you, because these are smaller units, we want to grow fast. And franchising is a system of learnings. It's a system of education. And if you do it right, and if you pivot and calibrate with the technology, and I'm not saying AI is not going to come and help us at some point, because it's coming through every, part of our lives, it's just a really great way. It's still a physical business. People still want to be with other people. They're not going to want to sit in front of the computer on the Pilates Reformer and do really hard exercises, maybe for 3 minutes, but then they're going to say, see you later. So I really think there's definitely longevity for a brand like JETSET.
Absolutely. You have been awesome. Final thoughts, final words of wisdom for the listeners.
Well, look, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm here for the long haul because I have 2 girls I'm raising as a single mom, and I want them to be proud of JETSET. So when they get out of college, one is 12, they could potentially be part of this company. And, I'm just excited with all the things that are happening as far as our growth. And it's always a business of 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, So I think the most important thing that I want to leave for the listeners, and I always tell this to my kids, I'd rather be a hardworking person than the smart person in the room, because that always gets you ahead.
Absolutely. Great advice, Tamara. Thank you so much for being here. You were awesome.
Thank you.
Continued success.
Thank you so much.
If you're ready to talk about franchise opportunities, hit the link below to schedule a call. My services are free. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.